Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 8th webinar of the Studying Greece Consulting webinar series from Insight to Impact. Hosting international education experts from Insight to Impact webinar series is included in the intelligence and consulting ecosystem of Studying Greece, an initiative aimed at providing Greek universities with key insights and strategic consultation to enable them make informed decisions regarding their internationalization performance and strategy. Today, we're delighted to have two exceptional experts from the world's leading organization in the field of higher education, QS. According to QS forecasts, by 2030, there will be approximately 8.5 million international students. But what happens next depends on how universities respond to both challenge and opportunity. In this fast-changing and challenging world, impacted and shaped by shifting geopolitics, demographic transitions, technological disruption, and evolving labor market trends, Studying Greece and QS join forces to build capacity within Greek higher education higher education institutions. Few words about QS and our partners and experts that will further elaborate on the key trends and international education challenges and opportunities. QS stands as a globally recognized authority in the higher education intelligence, offering universities an array of services ranging from rankings and performance, benchmarking to recruitment strategies, reputation management and consultancy. QS also informs decision-making through rigorous data analysis and global reach, helping institutions and governments elevate their international engagement. So we are particularly happy and privileged to have with us Eleni Bolu-Schlesinger, Partnerships Manager and Country Director at QS. Eleni is a higher education professional with over 15 years of experience advising universities, business schools, and government bodies across Europe, particularly the UK, Nordic countries, Greece, and Cyprus. She specializes in international marketing, reputation and brand development, student recruitment, partnership management, and research collaboration, helping institutions enhance global competitiveness and achieve long-term sustainability. At QS, she has led multi-year projects that leverage global datasets and insights to inform strategy, improve rankings, and expand international networks. Committed to education as a vital investment for growth, she supports institutions and individuals in maximizing their potential through international mobility, academic achievement, and career development. Eleni, kalimera.
Καλημέρα σας, είμαι πολύ χαρούμενη που είμαστε εδώ και έχουμε αυτή την όμορφη συνάντηση. Thank you very much. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ.
We also have Kesh Patel, lead consultant at QS. Kesh has nearly 20 years of experience advising universities worldwide on strategies to enhance international competitiveness and operational efficiency. Kesh specializes in strategy development, transformation, reputation, and brand building, student recruitment, and portfolio planning, helping institutions align academic offerings with industry and labor market needs. At QS, he has leveraged digital advertising and strategic frameworks to maximize institutional visibility and guide universities in developing comprehensive strategic plans. He has also advised governments on research, international partnerships, and student recruitment, supporting long-term institutional success and sustainability. Kesh, welcome.
Thank you, and pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, Eleni and Kesh, the floor is yours. Let me say a few words about the key pillars, the key components of today's event. We, first of all, are going to focus on global student flows, analyzing mobility trends by country and city, and identifying opportunities tailored for Greek universities, characteristics, and needs. We will also discuss Greece in global context, benchmarking performance against peer nations, reinforcing institutional reputation and paths forward for both ranked and unranked universities. And third, we will emphasize QS data submission, practical guidance for the 2026 ranking cycle, including tips on how to highlight institutional strengths effectively. Eleni and Kesh, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for your great cooperation.
Thank you so much, Theo. It's a pleasure to be here, as I mentioned earlier, and together with my colleague Kesh, we will be walking you through some key insights, which I hope you will find useful. As an overview, QS, what QS stands for is our mission, and the mission has remained the same for over 30 years. As Nunzio Quacquarelli, the Q of QS, has envisioned when he was a student himself at Wharton, and he wanted actually to support students find the right path to education, because back then information was not easily accessible. You had to order your brochures to be sent to you or shipped to you, to your country where you live. It was very difficult to visit the campus and get an idea if that is the right institution for you. So he built QS with a vision to share that knowledge and help students and overall motivated people around the world to fulfill their potential by actually fostering international mobility, educational achievement, and career development. And these are also the themels of what we do here at QS. And in our heart are our students, and everything that we do starts from them, preparing them to be the best version of themselves, to be able to study at the universities they aspire to study, and at the same time supporting universities to be the best version of themselves, enhancing everything that they do, the curriculum, their offering, and communicate that effectively to reach the right student personas. Moving on, just a few words about how we get all this data. We work with almost 7,000 universities around the world for the QS World University Rankings exercise. We have over 800 colleagues within QS representing over 40 countries around the world, and 15% of this is working on the ranking side. So there are a lot of things that we do at QS, and rankings is just one of them. And what it is important, and what we see also from our trends, is the opportunity to capture what prospective international students want through the data that we collect through the International Student Survey. Moving on, Kesh. These are a few trends on the visibility that we get on topuniversities.com every time we are publishing our rankings, and you can see the different spikes along the period of 2020 up until 2025, just for a reference. And the key pillars and the ways we are supporting universities, future learners, as well as governments, is through innovation, student recruitment, employability, and institutional performance. We are helping all these different key stakeholders to gather all the relevant insights necessary so that they can prepare and make informed decisions. Moving on, what you can also clearly see is the engagement that we have that goes where we take into consideration overall the feedback of over 100,000 employers that they take part to our survey every year, identifying the universities from where they are recruiting their workforce. We get the feedback of over 175,000 academics around the world, where they let us know which universities based on their knowledge are the best in the world. And we are serving also international students, because this is the only way to understand what prospective international students take into consideration before make the right decision. And within that in mind, we also work together with governments, and we are very, very pleased that we have started a collaboration with the Study in Greece, and supporting the vision of study in Greece and how to be better represented and exposed and showcase exactly what the brand stands for and what Greece is well known for. And this is where we need also the support of the Greek universities to identify also what drives each individual university. We have also analyzed, and we are trying to grasp what the employers are thinking, and we have analyzed over 200 million jobs, and this is also how we identify the skill gaps, and this is how we support universities in addressing those skill gaps and reflecting the right curriculum. This is overall as a nutshell of what we do, and with the most recent results on global student flows, we are able to see exactly the key trends. We have analyzed different sources and we have taken the feedback on many different portals where we were able to use different open source framework. Kesh, if you can move to the next slide. We have taken into consideration open source frameworks. We have mapped all the flows of international students, and we're able to forecast what the future looks like for international students. And we can even break it down, not just by country to see where the students are going, but even narrow it down by city. And these are very important data that the international offices can use. If you can move to the next slide. What key indicators have been able to contribute to this incredible and detailed and thorough exercise are the different demographics, the different economies. We have taken also feedback from academics, postgraduate prospects, affordability, as well as disruption factors, as Theo mentioned earlier. There are a lot of things that are changing. We have geopolitical changes. We had a pandemic that we survived a couple of years ago. I know it feels at the moment that it was very far and past, but it was just 4 years ago, and many other indicators that shape this strong research. And moving on, we have a very interesting dashboard where we can actually map all the student flows and we can filter down per city. So for example, students from China, where do they go? And even if we consider what China, mainland, or other specific cities, we can look down into every single country and identify exactly where are those students going. And we can also combine this kind of data with what employers are looking in prospective employees. So we can combine both, like where students are going, and also with the mind that those students will go back to their countries, what kind of jobs will be available for them to find and get employed, and help exactly shape the right curriculum. Moving on, we can see just the overview of exactly all the global flows since we're starting mapping those. And then what does the future looks like for us in higher education is that, as Theo mentioned, what we are forecasting is that over 8.5 million students by 2030 will be wanting international education. And how do we predict this? Because we started mapping all this kind of data that I mentioned earlier since 1970 up until now. And what we can see are 3 different scenarios. In the most optimistic one, there is a growth by 3.9. There is the optimistic scenario, the realistic, and also the pessimistic. But even in the pessimistic one, you can see that there is clearly a growth over the years. And this is one of the most powerful graphs, and which summarizes exactly which are going to be the international key markets that will be playing a pivotal role in student recruitment. Of course, India, everybody is looking at the moment at India, and India is still a very strong market, but it will be starting shrinking a little bit. China, we have seen that already. There is a decline in population there, even though it is a very big country. But what we see also is a growing population between 10 to 14 years old from Africa, and specifically from regions like Nigeria, Kenya, and other regions within that continent. Of course, this is an indicator of where the shift is going, but at the same time, you can analyze your own data and see from where you recruit students, and keep in mind the other upcoming markets. And we are here to help you target them with the right messaging. Talking about the right messaging, we need to consider the student motivations and expectations. At this point, I would also like to mention that feel free to, if you have any questions, to ask them along, put them in the chat so that we can have a nice dialogue. We wouldn't be able to do anything if we wouldn't take into consideration what prospective international students want, and that starts from the different phases that the student is passing through, deciding which course they want to study and what plays an important role there. For example, when we are looking down and per course, what prospective international students want to see is high quality of teaching. How do we showcase high quality of teaching within our universities? This is something that rankings not necessarily captures. So this is an area that you can demonstrate what that means and showcase that to prospective international students. They are looking for good reputation. What are your and that reputation is being covered by your academics, that they're traveling around the world talking about their research that they produce at your institution. It has to do with your international student mobility, your students that are going abroad and they share the experience, as well as your personnel and everybody that works for the university. And last but not least, affordability. When we are looking also at country selection or university selection, we see a similar pattern. High quality of teaching maintains on top of their list, together with reputation, and then factors like how welcoming the country is, or even the city, to international students. That plays an important role, and we are very good on that element because we have Xenios Diaz, and we support a lot our international students, and we have very good cases to showcase as a country overall, with an exceptional tourism and the whole experience that Greece can offer, as well as the culture and the lifestyle and the openness that characterize us as a nation. Now, these are some the 5 factors that indicate a university offers a high quality of teaching, and this is something that you can incorporate in your communication and justify the way you are showcasing that. Through received recognition of quality of teaching in national scheme, if you have that, if you rank well, if a university teaching staff is doing an exceptional work, if it uses up-to-date technology. And I have the feeling that due to COVID also, Greek universities were able to pivot very, very quickly to adapt to the digital world. And last but not least, ROI. What that means for your for the students and prospective international students to come and study at your university, and what will be the outcome and the connection with with the employer community. QS has a solution on that. We have QS Stars, where each institution can showcase its excellence. It is a rating system. It's a completely different from the ranking. It is an audit that takes 6 months to be completed. And what you can do to that, you will get a very detailed report where it will showcase the strengths of your university and areas for improvement. And during this exercise, you will be assessed in key different indicators like teaching quality, internationalization, employability, sustainability. And you can use also this kind of data to support the data submission process for the rankings. Stars is also how it operates is it's like the similar philosophy as a 5-star hotel. Students also who come to a country, they want to know, for example, what you are well known for. And if you say we are a 4 or 5-star university, it speaks directly to their minds as it speaks to us when we are choosing, for example, where we are going to stay, and we see it is a 4 or 5-star hotel. Immediately we know it is a quality hotel. And this is a similar way you can showcase what quality institution means that for your university. But most importantly, connect with a community of over 800 universities, because that will help with your internationalization strategy to be part of the QS Stars group of members. And you can showcase your research, you can showcase exactly how your international students and your students at your university are progressing, any new things that are happening at the university, and find supporters along the way, or different research collaboration projects. As an overview, you can see clearly with the universities that we're partnering with from different parts of the world, we have over 75 countries being represented in the QS Stars community. And this is a summary from me for something to keep in mind, and I will pass the floor to my colleague Kesh, who will guide you through the performance of Greek universities and Greece overall on a global scale versus key peer groups of country universities that we have analyzed for you, and share also some key insights of the subjects that help Greek universities are excelling at, and what are the key deadlines to keep in mind for this very important exercise of data submission. Kesh, the floor is over to you.
Thank you, Eleni, and hello everyone again. So as Eleni mentioned, I'm going to talk about the rankings for the next sort of towards the end of the hour. If you do have questions, please do raise your hands, ask out loud, or type into the chat. This is the type of section where we typically get more questions around rankings performance. But it's not just about the rankings. As Eleni mentioned and Theo mentioned, one of the primary objectives is to attract more international students to Greece to study with you, to attract that research funding, the partnerships, and so on. And the rankings are a tool, are a way to showcase your strengths as institutions and then collectively as a country. So I've got a mix of a couple of light methodology slides, but also performance itself. And we're going to look at the World University rankings and the subject rankings primarily. But just a little bit of a step back into the overview. When QS evaluates universities for the World University rankings and on all of our rankings, we look at lenses, we look at indicators, and we look at metrics. Lenses are the big thematic areas and parts of a university that we want to evaluate. So what's that sort of purpose element? And they could be research, sustainability, it could be global engagement, and so on. We then go one step deeper or more granular into indicators. So how do we measure your sort of global engagement and visibility? It's done through various indicators, such as reputation, such as your citations and things like that. And then we have an additional layer of granularity, where we look at very specific metrics regarding your performance. So that indicator is then broken into individual metrics. So what does that look like? Well, that's what this looks like. So this is the methodology weighting for the World University Rankings. We have those big thematic areas, those lenses when we look at research and discovery, global engagement, sustainability, learning experience, and employability and outcomes. And we have these because we know that these are key decision-making factors for students when they're trying to decide where to study. But then the indicators themselves are broken into the smaller sort of pie charts that we see here. So academic reputation and citations per faculty, they make up research and discovery. Under global engagement, we have international faculty ratio, international research network, and the international student ratio, and so on and so forth. There is a new one coming in next year, or is likely to come in next year, which is about the diversity of international students that you have on your campuses or studying your programs. So at the moment, we have evaluated universities for this, but it doesn't count towards the final weighting. And the pie chart in the middle just shows the weightings that we give to each of these thematic areas overall. So it's quite critical when we look at this that 50% of your overall performance within the World University Rankings comes from research and discovery. So it's the reputation that you have amongst the academic community for the research that you do. And that's the citations per faculty. So that's the reputation or the awareness on paper, your market perception on paper. And then the more subjective market perception piece in terms of the thoughts of academics around the world when they nominate you or vote for you within the QS surveys. So quite a large proportion goes towards this. And we'll look at this in a little bit more detail in the next few slides, because there's an interesting story or some insights to show on this. Where does this data come from that we use? Well, there's three main sources of data. 45% of that weighting you saw on the previous slide, the data comes from surveys that QS distributes. And there are two surveys. One survey goes to academics around the world, and I hope some of you on the call today have received that survey and completed it. The other survey is sent to employers around the world, so industry contacts, and they complete the survey to really sort of give their feedback on the excellence of the graduates that you're producing. 30% of this data comes from you yourselves as universities. So you would submit that data directly to us, and we'll talk a little bit more about the time frame and the windows for that a little bit later. And then the remaining 25%, we collect all of the research, the bibliometric data directly from Scopus. We collect this data once a year, and then we reanalyze it for all of the different rankings, and we use different methods to do that depending on which ranking it is. So this is just that snapshot view again of how we use that data across all of the indicators. Now, in the World University Rankings, you may not be aware, but there are 7 Greek universities within the QS World University Rankings, at least in the last edition that was published in June of this year. So we have everything from National Technical University of Athens all the way down to the University of Ionia. The range in terms of where everybody is ranked does vary. National Technical University of Athens is ranked at 355 overall. Whereas as we progress sort of lower down the rankings range, so when we look at Patras, for instance, you then start to go into the banded range. So we group together the ranking range and publish that on the website. Just as a sneak peek of some of the slides to come, you can also see a little bit of the performance here. So if we look at the citations per faculty and academic reputation just sort of below, this falls under the research and discovery lens that we look at. And what's interesting here is you have great strengths, or universities generally have great strengths within the citations per faculty. So what that indicates to someone like me is that you're producing excellent research It's being read and cited by academics all around the world, and we've picked up that data from Scopus. But where we are lacking as universities is how we actually make that research more visible, how we showcase our strengths in these particular academic disciplines, and really showcase to the world that we are good at research, whether it's by specific disciplines or overall as a university. But we'll look into that in a little bit more detail in a few slides' time. This chart, so we've just chosen a few select peer countries to look at, so more regional, more appropriate for yourselves. And what we're looking at here is the average rank for all of the universities that we rank within these countries. It is always a little bit volatile for Greece itself and for the Greek sort of education system. The dip that we saw here is because in 2024 we actually ranked 8 Greek universities within the world rankings, and then unfortunately one dropped out, which then brought up the average back to the 672. I think at its peak we actually ranked 10 Greek universities in total, and I think that was back in 2023. But obviously at the moment we're at 7 institutions. Hopefully in the years to come we'll have more and more of you ranked publicly, and we'll be able to see this data chart changing here. Now, performance on a country level against peers. I should note and just explain one thing on methodology first. When QS calculates the rankings and we conduct the analysis, we calculate it on an indicator by indicator basis first. So this is what you see when we look at academic reputation, citations per faculty, international research network, and so on. Your score here is given out of 100, and the top performing institution for that particular indicator is scored at 100 out of 100, and everybody else is scored relative to that. So for yourselves, what we can see then here is you're scored at 22 out of the 100 for academic reputation and 47 out of 100 for the citations per faculty. And this goes back to what I was saying a few slides ago in terms of when we look at the data, we see that you have great academic strengths when it comes to the research that you're doing, but it's just not as visible. And so then people are not necessarily, or academics are not necessarily nominating you in the surveys in recognition of that research. Furthermore, the research that you're doing is globally sort of collaborated on. We see that within the International Research Network. That's a very good score, 63 out of 100 there. So your international partnerships and links that you have when co-authoring your research is very strong, but we're just not leveraging that to build this academic reputation piece. The international faculty indicator is very low. I feel though here it's really more of a data submission issue that we have for universities. You have to be mindful that you do have international staff working at your universities conducting research, many of whom will have dual citizenship. And I think what is happening, or Eleni and I both think what is happening, is that when you submit data to QS, you're submitting based on the Greek national figure as opposed to the secondary nationality, so their international nationality. And if you reported that figure, I think actually there'll be some significant improvement here for your universities. And then the international students, I know policy changes, etc., have come into play now, and hopefully we will see this figure grow in years to come. The employment side, again, very strong. So employers are recognizing you for the quality of your graduates around the world. So when we look at the peers, this is actually very, very comparable. It's only Turkey out of this set that exceeds you in this particular indicator. So this is a good strength position to be building upon. Likewise with employment outcomes, this is a 2-part indicator where part of this we look at the graduate employment rate, so how many of your students have actually gained employment after they've graduated their studies with you. but then also the number of notable alumni. So how many of those students are in or have achieved, great career success by rising to positions of prominence, or have received accolades for their work. That's what makes up this particular indicator. And this is an ever-growing indicator. Your QS is scraping more and more of this data over each ranking cycle. And so you do have some strengths here that we can really utilize and showcase. I'll skip over faculty-student ratio and we'll just talk a little bit about sustainability. Another one of those key areas for students as part of their decision-making sort of exercise. And what is really sort of prevalent here is the rapid growth in performance here. So more of that data submission and accurate data submission will really help sort of exceed or increase your performance within the sustainability indicators. This chart just shows the previous data in a slightly different, nuanced way. So what we're looking at here is the contribution of all of those indicators to your overall performance on a country level basis. And the key highlight that I wanted to really raise here is if we look at the pie chart at the bottom. So for yourselves, the average score that you've achieved as universities is 28.1. And that's made up of the weightings for each of the indicators. But at the pie chart at the very bottom, what we can see is that of that 28.1, 32% of your performance has come from that citations per faculty indicator. So what this is showing is you do have those strengths as a country or as a group of universities here that we're looking at. With that research excellence, it's just how do we build that up, and particularly when we look at the other countries within this peer set, some of whom do produce a lot of research. It's just you're producing better quality research according to all the metrics. We do just need to leverage that a little bit more. And then just the 7 universities that we do actually rank within the rankings themselves, it's the same narrative really. Broadly speaking, if we look at the green bars within the chart and also the pie chart, the research is there. We just need to build that reputation. So that international visibility, that showcasing of your strengths, that leveraging of the partnerships will really come into play when trying to improve your overall performance. So let's look at the subject rankings now. So QS produces 55 different subject rankings in total. We use the similar sorts of data. So we use academic and employer reputation, as we have seen in the world rankings. But the bibliometric data, that research data, does change a little bit. So we then look at citations per paper, we look at H-index, and then we still look at the International Research Network. So we look at a more detailed view of your research outputs, and we attribute your research to each of the QS individual subject rankings. And these are the subject rankings that you sort of see on the screen now. The data that we have, the latest data is from 2025, or earlier in this year. The last cycle that was published in March. The next edition of the subject rankings will be published in March of next year. But what we can see with this particular chart is the importance or the weighting of each indicator varies from subject to subject. And that is to account for the uniqueness of each of those subjects. So life sciences, medicine-based subjects will account for more bibliometric data and research, whereas arts-based subjects account more for academic reputation because there's fewer amounts of research produced, fewer papers published within the arts and humanities. So what does that look like for yourselves, for Greece? Well, this is where Greek universities are currently ranked and positioned within each of the rankings. So if we just look at archaeology first, as the first chart. So each column represents each subject ranking. The grey bar that you see here represents the published range. So from a QS perspective, we publish the top 250 or so universities for archaeology on the website. And for yourselves, there's 2 universities that are actually ranked within the top 100 for archaeology here. Overall, six of you are ranked within the top 100 for these subjects. 19 in the blue dots that you see ranked within the top 100 to 200, and then 78 rankings within the rest of the range from the 200 plus. So this is actually quite a good chart to look at. Much of your performance as universities comes from the subject rankings. The question you need to ask yourselves is, as a country, what do we want to be known for? Or as a university, what do we want to be known for? From this data, clearly, if we look at the green dots, you're really known for archaeology. That's not a surprise given the history that you have within the country. Likewise with classics and civil engineering, and then dentistry. So that's where your core strengths really come through. But then if you look at some of the sort of bluer dots where you're also known for on a more secondary basis, architecture, which I believe should be a little bit more higher up within this particular ranking. You have more of the engineering-based subjects as well. Even hospitality, given the destination that Greece is, would expect hospitality to be a little bit higher ranked here. A little bit more of a busy chart to look at, a more complicated chart. So it's the same data that we saw on the previous chart, or the same format and layout. But what we see here is in the red dots, this is where we're actually assessing you as universities, but you've not quite made it. The performance isn't good enough to be within the published range. So there is actually some really good positives to take from this in terms of, as universities, you're being assessed for many of the QS subject rankings, if not all 55 of them. We just need to focus efforts a little bit more when it comes to data submission and so on to really improve the performance and then showcase to the world, this is what we are, this is what we want to be known for, this is where our excellence is when it comes to our research not just as a university, but also as a country. So some really good positives to take away from this particular chart. We will, of course, share all of these charts so you can look at them afterwards and circulate internally to colleagues. Okay. So now we move on to the next sort of phase of conversation in terms of, well, what can you be doing to engage with the rankings and submit data to QS? We are in a very fortunate time of the year in terms of the new cycle for data collection is starting. In fact, it starts today. It actually opens today. So you have you're in an advantage position of talking to us today about this. Why take part? Well, Eleni sort of mentioned a little bit earlier in terms of the student recruitment and what students look at in terms of defining high quality teaching and so on and so forth. For yourselves as institutions, rankings are a great way to benchmark your performance, not just against each other, but internationally. If you're then working on a ranking strategy internally, you can learn from other universities and what they're doing in terms of best practice. And particularly with this learning piece, you have to understand that the rankings is just an output of what you do as a university. So you should be focusing on your university strategy first, and then the success of that, the outputs of that will feed into the rankings. And that's much feeds into the point 3 about the planning. The marketing and the celebrating pieces, 4 and 5 there, they're all about those successes, those outputs. So having, subject areas where you're ranked in the top 100 is something to be celebrated and promoted around the world, because that will help then to attract students, particularly as we know certain countries have these policies on scholarship funding for their students to universities that are ranked within the top 100 and so on. China is one of those sort of key examples of that. So with data submission itself, as I mentioned, the cycle opens today in terms of submitting data. You have until the 12th of February to submit most of that institutional data. So that data really comes into play when we're talking about your faculty numbers, your student numbers, the diversity, so the different countries that your students have come from. All of that data really does come into this first element. The survey contacts itself, so the reputation indicators, academic and employee reputation, as I mentioned, they are the data from that comes from surveys that we distribute. You have an opportunity to showcase and submit up to 400 of your academic contacts plus 400 of your employer contacts that we can send the surveys to, and hopefully they would then nominate you, and that would then lead to increased performance within that academic and employee reputation indicator. And you have till the end of January to be able to submit that data to us. The reputation surveys themselves, we start distributing those in November, and then it will run towards the end of March. So there's plenty of time for university, so academics and employers to complete that data. And then for the sustainability rankings, the deadline, or the cycle opens for that one in January and closes on the 10th of April. So a slightly different time frame for that as well. Amongst your colleagues internally, somebody should have access to the QS Hub platform in order to submit your data and upload your data. If nobody does have access, then please do reach out to the rankings team. There's an email address a little bit later on, and we can get that arranged and sorted for you. Whoever the contact is will have also received an email from QS last week or the week before, notifying them about the upcoming deadlines and the webinar that they have coming up in the next few weeks. So please do check that somebody is looking after this internally. And then in terms of why you should be submitting data, obviously greater accuracy about your data so that we can evaluate you properly. Your academic nominations and employer nominations, there's a greater chance of us receiving more of those nominations for you if they're from contacts that are familiar with you as well. You can have updates from us in terms of all the sort of ranking insights and so on. And you can then, if you're submitting data and into that cycle, that routine and culture of submitting data, we can obviously then analyze your data a little bit more in more detail. This is the hub access details. I'll sort of skip over this chart, and then you can check internally who has access and whether they are on top of submitting the data. And then with the data itself, the one that I want to sort of focus on more so is the student and faculty, because I think this is one of those key areas that you need to sort of look at internally. The definitions for staff and students, they are listed on the website in terms of how QS defines full-time equivalents. So QS looks at a 3-to-1 ratio, so 3 part-time members of staff would be the equivalent of 1 full-time member of staff. But if there is a different policy that you use internally as a country as part of your government reporting, then we're happy to use that as well. And then the other key element here that I wanted to highlight or reiterate is the definition of international faculty. So as I mentioned earlier, many of your faculty staff will have dual nationalities. For the purposes of the rankings, you can still use their original or international nationality as part of this, and submitting that figure will then help boost your performance within that international faculty ratio indicator. The employment statistics, we received that from the surveys that you would distribute when you're checking whether your students have actually gained employment. So please ensure that the time frame that you're doing that within sort of adheres and fits. QS is looking at anything between sort of 6 months and 18 months. So if your cycle of sending your emails out or collecting that data is different, then please do let us know and give us that explanation why, and then we can account for that as part of the calculations. Reputation surveys. The surveys that we distribute, we send to our QS database of academics and employers. Over the last few cycles, we received responses from over 175,000 academics and over 100,000 employers. You do have that opportunity to add your contacts to that database, and we actively encourage you to do so because you want to grow the numbers of those nominations. So please do try and get involved with that. In terms of the way it works, there are two options to submitting data to us. We have contact list and sign-up facility. The difference between this is very much the GDPR compliance policies that we would have to work with. So with the contact list submission, you would need to collect the GDPR consent yourselves. With the sign-up facility, the contact or whoever your contact is, they would sign up to receive the survey, and so the onus is on them to give their consent. To be honest, the contact list submission is the one that works the best out of the two. But I appreciate that we're in this time of the year where you need to be more agile and submit data quickly. And so actually the sign-up facility may work better just in this year, just to try and get those contacts in and to us. There's a whole host of advice in terms of, the best contacts to submit, who you should really be looking at, how do you engage with these contacts throughout the year, and the webinar that the rankings team will be putting on at the end of the month will actually cover a little bit of that. And speaking of the webinar, it's on the 30th of September at 10 a.m. Local time to yourselves. It's the rankings team themselves that will be putting on the webinar, so they'll go through more data or more detail in terms of what you need to submit, how the platform looks, and where you would submit that data to. And obviously it's free to attend, so click on the link and register, or circulate this to the appropriate colleague within your universities to look at this. And if they can't attend, it is recorded, so you can always watch it back later. So that was a very quick sort of snapshot view. A lot of positive sort of signs that we see within the data, a lot of opportunity for yourselves. It's really about that focused effort and working together to try and really build on the greatness that you already have and showcase it to the world. That brand visibility, that research visibility, that's going to be the key for Greek universities moving forward. So with that, we have a few minutes, maybe about 5 or so minutes for questions. Are there any questions? Look, can't see any in the chat, but please either type them in, unmute, raise your hand if you have questions. Oh, there we go. Okay, I noticed that only universities of Patras has 4 QS stars. Why is that? That would have been due to the assessment at the time and the audit at the time of when that was conducted. So with the data that was submitted for that audit itself, unfortunately, there's the awarding has only been 4 stars. There would have been an accompanying report with the star audit, which would have shown the areas for improvement, and there's typically a roadmap that goes with that. So if that roadmap was sort of implemented, improvements were made for the various different sort of indicators that we use within the stars rating. If there was to be a re-audit, then they may well increase within that. I assume that the data submission to QS is performed by the local quality assurance departments, MODIP in Greek. Is that so? Can individual departments have access to QS Hub and edit data that concern them? Okay. With the data submission for QS, it's done by each university. So it's not done by any government agency or body. Each university is responsible for submitting its own data to us. So every university has an equal opportunity to submit data. If you don't have Hub, there's one of the links that are there within the slides. Please do click on the link. You'll be able to register, contact our rankings team. They will give you access to Hub, or however many people within your university that are responsible for this. Multiple people can have access to the platform, and then you can all submit the data yourselves. QS, or the rankings team, also scrape publicly available data. So where universities don't submit data directly to us, we will use what is publicly available within government reports and official sort of verifiable data sets. So we may well have used the MODIP data in the past, But it's always best if it comes directly from a university because it can be more up to date, etc., and more accurate in that sense. So with that one, please do, whoever is responsible for this internally within your universities, reach out to our rankings team and we can get them set up with access to Hub. Yeah. And different universities around the world will have different departments responsible for this. Yeah, your universities, have your MODIP. Some institutions, it sits within the international office. Some it sits within the research office. It really depends on who will be taking onus of this within the university. So another question here: how are the 5,000 universities that were selected? Does this mean citations per faculty? Are there faculties with 500 members of staff? Other cases only 20 or 30? Okay, so first question there in terms of the universities that are selected. So within the university rankings, we try and assess all universities around the world, but that can be challenging. There are arguably 30,000 universities in the world. No one really knows because the definition of a university can be different from country to country. And we are constantly expanding the number of universities that we look at and evaluate. We can only publish the top. In the case of the World University Rankings, we publish the top 1,500. But that figure is always expanding. We want to publish more and more universities. We just need better quality data in order to do that. The citations per faculty piece, the definition of that is it's the simple ratio. It's how many citations are given to the research output that you have per faculty member of staff. So we collect all of the citations data from Scopus. You as institutions, when you publish your papers, they will be in journals. Those journals are indexed by Elsevier's Scopus database. They are attributed to you because you tag the institution that you are working at, or your academics will tag that institution. And then we attribute all of that research to you as your university. We look at the citations that those papers have received, and then we divide that by the number of faculty staff that you report to us that you have, or that we've collected from the MODIP, so publicly available data. There is more to that methodology in the background in terms of the number of the years that we look at, that time frame window, etc. But that conversation, I think, is best had in a more sort of detailed environment there. And then there are faculties with 500 members of staff, other cases with only 20 or 30. Yes, we fully appreciate this. We appreciate that universities are different sizes around the world. They have different focus areas, some that are very medicine, life science focused, some that are very specialist arts or humanities focused, and so on. We take that into account as part of the calculations. And this is why a lot of the indicators that we use are very ratio based, because it eliminates size and it goes to productivity or impact. So we do try and take that into account. There are also several weightings that we use behind the scenes as well, to account for the size of a university and the things like the size, the age of a university. Historic universities will have built up or would have had an opportunity to build up their reputation over a longer period of time compared to newer universities, and so on. There's various different ways that we have behind the scenes.
Well, Eleni and Kesh, thank you so much for your insightful and comprehensive presentations. I was sure that our audience would focus on rankings, but our cooperation and partnership extends beyond rankings.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it has two basic pillars, critical components. First of all, regarding brand awareness, storytelling, promotion of Greek higher education institutions, we are planning to create the Study in Greece page, including all Greek state universities on your website, on your portal, which is a world-renowned hub, and it can attract potential students from around the globe. Second, we should increase and multiply our international footprint and reach. And we are going to achieve this by participating in a wide range of QS recruitment events taking place all around the globe. And this will be our participation in your events will be based on research and insights and data analysis from your part, because we want to make informed decisions, and how we are going to make informed and data-driven decisions through your expertise. We would like to craft an internationalization strategy based on the trends of the international education landscape, but at the same time adjust it to the needs and characteristics of Greek higher education and specific profiles of each Greek higher education institution, even international programs. So I think that rankings is really important, and it relates to the attractiveness of Greek universities. But at the same time, we should find alternative and smart ways in order to promote and showcase our strengths on a global scale. And this should be based on research and data-driven decision-making. So I would like to thank you so much again for this great cooperation, for sharing your expertise, experience, and wealth of up-to-date insights. And we look forward to the continuation of our fruitful cooperation.
Theo, thank you so much for having us here. It is a great opportunity to share some key insights, and also through our collaboration, enhance the global visibility of Greece and all the Greek universities listed on topuniversities.com, which attracts over 70 million unique visitors per year, which is quite a significant number. And within that community, we engage with a lot of prospective international students, so it is the right place actually to raise the awareness of what it is to study in Greece, what does that mean, which universities we have, what are the programs, what programs Greek universities are offering. This is also something that can help with the internationalization strategy and help attract the right student personas. And with this in mind, also the global exposure is important, but also the opportunity to meet and engage in person and talk directly and connect and network with prospective international students at the key regions and markets where they are based. It will give also another way to have this engagement going and physical presence in those key markets, and we can support you on this journey.
And of course, you are more than welcome to Greece.
Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ. Είμαι από την Αθήνα ήδη, οπότε θα χαρώ ανά πάσα στιγμή να οργανώσουμε και συναντήσεις.
A conference, or a seminar in person.
Exactly.
So thank you so much. The presentation, the webinar will be available online on our intelligence and consulting page. And have a nice day, all of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. You too.
Bye.